Hello, hello. This is Christina Bart. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. It's our last show of the year. At least I think it is anyway. It's our last news show of the year. Doesn't mean I won't pop up at some point, but let's just plan for this being the last. So happy almost New Year, guys. Thank you for sticking with me. Today we are going to be talking about a former hostage of Hamas who is telling her story, who was actually used under duress to make a propaganda video for Hamas that people elevated and used to say, oh, they're not so bad, even though common sense would tell you that it's not normal for people to say, oh yeah, they're treating me really well after they massacred a bunch of people and kidnapped you and other folks. So I just think it's important to put some things into perspective about how people really use the horror of this young woman to try to pacify the awful actions that Hamas put, inflicted upon the Israelis. So we'll be talking about that. Also, Governor DeWine of Ohio, who's supposed to be Republican, decided to veto a bill which will, I assume, be overturned, his veto. So why even do that? Who knows? But it was about protecting children from, surgeries and all that sort of stuff, and putting restrictions, et cetera, on gender affirming care, as they call it. So some people are very upset today at him, and his whole thing is like, well, the parents, I guess, know best, and we need to be careful about telling them too much, or I guess limiting them, because they care the most about their kids. But just because people care about their kids doesn't mean that they are not going to abuse them in some sort of way, especially if doctors are emotionally blackmailing people. So we'll talk about that. Also, Nikki Haley is like continuing to, in my opinion, very much dig a deeper hole about the slavery issue. So she was asked about it quite a bit yesterday, and so we talked about it yesterday, her initial comments and some comments that she made later. But we're going to watch another video that she said, we're standing right next to the governor of New Hampshire. I wonder if he's like, this was the perfect endorsement after all this, because just a heck of an answer that's just really not going to play well, even if she made it to the general, or even if she makes it onto the VP spot, which, I don't have the clip pulled up. Maybe I can find it in the midst of us live here. But she was asked about being Trump's VP, and then she just kind of offered a word salad. And there's some people on, close to Trump who doesn't want her as VP, and there's people who are like, you never know. And Trump himself, he claimed he wasn't really thinking about VP, but he also was asked about it and didn't rule it out. So Chris Christie was talking trash about her for not just plainly saying, no, I will not be his VP. So I wouldn't, if you're like on the Trump train and you're like, but you hate Nikki Haley and you would see it as betrayal if he picked her, I would not write off all the rumors about him possibly picking her. Steve Deese had a theory that the Koch brothers were putting so much money into Nikki Haley as a dowry. Like, okay, Trump, you want all this money that we're spending on Haley, you got to pick her. So I'm like, well, that's an interesting take. Perhaps it's true. Who knows? But those are the things that we will be talking about today. And I do want to also talk about the massacre that happened on Christmas in Nigeria. I haven't seen really many people talk about it, but it was a Christmas Eve massacre, and it's really wild to me because it's been years since my dad went there. My oldest sister went there, but they went there for mission trips, and it's just crazy how violent I guess the world is today, but particularly how violent some places are and how um Christians are attacked and so on. So anyway, before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different videos, different articles, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream and run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support in that way. I do appreciate it. You guys can also give stars for watching on Facebook. You guys can do super chats if you're on YouTube. Another way to support is and to get some cool stuff is to go check out the merchandise. So go ahead and go to the store and check out what we have there on site. Also, check out some of my books that I've written. I've written 17 altogether. So if you're interested in any of them, most are fiction. I do have 2 nonfiction books. One of them is my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. So I recommend that you go ahead and check that out. My books are available on paperback and ebook, but you can find all the information if you go to the website and go to the merchandise page. There's a banner that will take you to my book website. And I do not have a meme for you guys today, so we're just going to jump into the main story thus far and just get going. And shout out to people watching live and those of you who watch it back, see you in the comments. And if you're on Facebook and YouTube, you guys can't see each other's comments, but I see them pouring in. So thank you guys. So there was some time ago a propaganda video that was released by Hamas from one hostage named Mia. And Mia was like, oh, they're treating me very nice. And people are like, see, they're treating her very nice. She was even hurt. And they did surgery on her arm, from my understanding, without anesthesia. So to me, I'm like, she's under duress. Why would she say, oh yeah, they're treating me like garbage when they're having a propaganda video? But so many bad actors elevated it. It was like, see, they're not so bad. They're treating people humanely. People even use it to kind of dismiss talk of Hamas committing sexual assault, because they're like, well, they're treating her good, so why would they be treating the women bad? And all that, of course, was poppycock. And she said what she said to stay alive, but she ended up being released because of the hostage deals or whatever. So she's suffered great trauma, physically and mentally, from her ordeal. And but now she's telling her story. So I'm going to go through this thread that AG Hamilton, a 29, put together with talking about Mia with some clips. And to the people who were just totally bad actors in this entire situation, just garbage human beings. Okay, so you said, if you want to understand how Hamas propaganda is created on here and spreads, let me show you a perfect example. 21-year-old Mia Schem was taken hostage by Hamas on 10/7, October 7. She had her arm blown off. Her arm, they shot her arm. It wasn't like shotgun, no longer have an arm. So she was released as part of the ceasefire exchange. While she was still in Hamas captivity, they had her film a hostage video in October. Then right before her release, they had her film another video under gunpoint where she said she was treated very good and people in Gaza were very kind to her. That main anti-Israel propaganda, the main anti-Israel propaganda accounts on here then promoted that video for millions of views, suggesting Hamas was treating the hostages very well. So some of these folks, I've seen his propaganda. They elevated it. Jackson Hinkle, definitely seen the scumbag share a lot of stuff. He and has gotten a lot of he's trended a lot. He's just gotten a lot of elevation. And I don't understand why the algorithm keeps promoting people who say such blatantly sort of false things on Twitter, but I think they need to like adjust that a bit. But on TikTok, he started a TikTok. I don't know how that's going, but he jumped on there too. But there's a lot of propaganda on TikTok, so he's probably like, "Oh, that's my new bread and butter." But definitely, I've seen him spread a lot of falsehoods and say a lot of terrible things. So I've seen this account and this one as well. So they shared that video of her saying that they treated her very nice. And then you had certain people with media platforms like Brianna Joy Gray use such propaganda to dismiss the possibility of rape and claim that hostages faced humane treatment. Providing no evidence, State Department spokesperson advances theories that unreleased female Israeli hostages are rape victims who Hamas withheld because they don't want them to speak publicly about their treatment. What we know so far is that Israeli hostages that have been allowed to speak to press affirmed humane treatment, while Palestinian hostages have attested to beatings and sexual assault. So, again, what kind of moron do you have to be to know that people are being held by Hamas? And knowing the sorts of things that they did to civilians on October 7th, and obviously the hostages are aware of the sort of brutal things that they did, and they put a camera in front of your face and they're armed and they say something, you know they're making a propaganda video. You could be a brave one and tell the truth. It would probably result in some beatings, if not having your brains blown out. So this desire to trust the terrorists, which some of these people don't even want to call them terrorists, or they're, I don't know, freedom fighters or pushing against the oppression. I don't know. Well, we'll just call them terrorists. They're so quick to want to believe these terrorists and will analyze every single thing that Israel says with a fine tooth comb and be like, I think that, burned image of that charred baby is actually, AI or something, or analyzing like, someone brought up, the whole calendar gate the libertarian redhead. She got a lot of, I guess she was in a lot of people's feeds, during like October and stuff, questioning the Israeli government as they released certain photos, crime scenes of bloodied children's rooms. And then she's like, I don't, that red on the coloring book, there's pink there, and that's not how blood dries, etc. And so she was accusing them of staging the room. Now there were like markers that were pink, like near the coloring books. I don't know what that color was for, but it's like, do you not believe that these kids and these people were killed? Because there's evidence, like, live streamed events and witness testimony from those who were fortunate enough to not be brutally murdered. So, but still faced obvious trauma and violence. But they don't want to believe. And all of that leaves a lasting false impression. Then we get to now. She has had a chance to recover, and she's sharing the real story on how she was treated, which is a complete opposite of humane. Here, Mia talks specifically about the video cited above by the propagandist on here that Hamas made her record just before heading home. A Hamas terrorist with a camera confronts you and tells me to say that the people of Gaza are nice, say kind things. Me, I'm gonna zoom that, make that bigger, so you guys can see that.
בדרך חזרה הביתה, אנשי התעמולה של חמאס מצלמים גם את הסרטון הזה.
People very good, very kind to me. כולו תמם, food good and the kindness and everything. אתה יודע, את השנייה לפני החזרה הביתה, בא אליך חמאסניק עם מצלמה לפנים. הוא אומר לי, תגידי שהאנשים בעזה נחמדים, תגידי מילים טובות, מה אני אגיד לו, אתם חרות?
אם הייתי מעמיד את המצלמה שם והיית אומרת באמת מה שאת מרגישה.
לא רוצה לנבל את הפה. אבל אין שם אזרח אחד תמים. אין שם, זה לא קיים.
בדרך חזרה הביתה, אנשי התעמולה של
So, she been through some things to say, like, there are no innocent people, they do not exist. That is, and there's more to her interview. I mean, you guys can check it out. But the reason why she feels that way is because there was a family that was holding her hostage, that was keeping track of her. So she was groped and stuff before they a Hamas fighter shot her dead in her arm, point blank. And that's why she has that cancer. She did have surgery. And they groped her, and she thinks the reason why they didn't totally violate her, I guess, because at that point they just took her off and finished the kidnapping. And so there was a family that held her hostage, and there was a husband there who was very creepy, who would watch her all the time. And the reason why she thinks that he probably did not sexually assault her is because the wife was super jealous and would always be by the door with her kids and stuff. And the wife would bring her food every other couple days. And they obviously didn't treat her well. So it's bad enough when you see the footage of there's a hospital, they say they operate out of hospitals or whatever, and they have the tunnels, or there's video footage of them bringing some of the hostages into the hospitals, but they're using civilian homes to hold some of these people captive. So it's not a good situation, and these people aiding and abetting the terrorists. Now you could say, well, if Hamas says you have to do it, I don't know what their arrangement was. As she said in another clip that the people like Hamas. Now we know from other clips and stuff that's not all the people like Hamas. Some of them are upset about them stealing the food, stealing the aid, launching the war that's led to people dying. In rare moments where people speak up at the risk of their own lives, because many people, if they tell the truth, journalists and other people told the truth, they'd be in severe danger. But there's been different polling that they do have large support of people in Gaza, and there's people in the West Bank who support them as well. And it's just obviously not a good situation for Israel. So it is a good situation that they're winning their war, that they have more military might. But we know people keep calling for ceasefire. They should ignore those things until they achieve their objective, in my humble opinion. And I'll say this, I have said it many times and I'll continue to say it. You cannot live with a monster at the foot of your bed that is going to seek to kill you and to kill your children. You have to take care of the threat. You have to neutralize it in some kind of way. I'm not saying go and commit mass genocide, which they could do if they wanted to. People throw around words like genocide and indiscriminate bombing. Go look up the word what indiscriminate means. You guys don't apparently know what it means. They take many measures to make sure that they limit casualties. Do they have casualties of civilians? Of course it happens. Are there times when they make mistakes? They accidentally killed 3 of their own of the Israeli hostages. But they're in such danger, and Hamas fighters try to set up different traps that when the hostages escaped and tried to say, hey, where are the hostages, and like things just didn't kind of track for them, and they thought it like looked like an actual, prop a trap. And one of the parents actually like wrote a letter. It was really sweet and very kind, considering that they just lost a loved one, but they said, we don't blame you, we'll take you to our home and love on you, and you have to do what's right for you guys, and you guys have to protect yourself, and we appreciate you being here and doing what you have to do. So everyone who spread the propaganda pretending like Hamas was just treating these hostages so well, knowing your comments, it was a dumb lie. Common sense would tell you that they had to behave in a certain way to save their life. But obviously they weren't treated humane. And the attack obviously wasn't humane. So anyone who wants some kind of deal with these people, you're just delaying the inevitable of more Jews being killed. I think these people do need to be liberated from Hamas. And I definitely think there are people who want to be. I don't know how big that number is, but to the people in the West spreading this propaganda, who call for Israel to lay down their arms and aren't too interested in condemning Hamas when they reject ceasefires, like Egypt proposed something the other day. I have to ask, why are you so quick? What people like Brianna Joy Gray, who are so quick to want to believe Hamas and take them at their word and pretend that they're the good guys in the situations, that they're the victim, and Israel isn't fighting a retaliation war and trying to protect themselves from an existential crisis. So, just a reminder of Mia's story. When people try to talk to you about propaganda and Hamas isn't so bad, remind them that they forced her to say that they were treating her kindly. And the truth was that they blew off her arm, not totally blew off. They shot her in the arm, sexually assaulted her, kept her with a family. And she was concerned about a creepy man coming in to sexually assault her, and his wife, who could have showed her some compassion, was like, I'm only going to feed you X amount of days. That's crazy. That is crazy. So my heart goes out to her. She's suffering from epilepsy now and lack of sleep and emotional trauma. I just I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Anyway, let's move on. You guys can check out Mia's interview online. Um, let's talk about Ohio. So in Ohio, Governor DeWine decided to veto House Bill 68 on transgender medical care. So I'm going to go through this article from Columbus Dispatch with you guys really quick. This sort of thing is so puzzling to me because I'm like, this should be like easy when like aligned with your base. Everybody should be on the same page. I was pretty stunned watching Nikki Haley's interview when she's like, when they asked her about like if a 12-year-old wants to change their gender, and she's like, government should stay out of it. Up to the parents. I'm like, what? So when she was confronted on the debate stage, and Ron was like, Nikki Haley's okay with it, she's like, no, that's a lie, Ron. Not a lie. Not a lie. She said what she thought she needed to say. And then when people had, pushed up against it, she just pretended like she didn't say what she said. And I talked about Nikki Haley yesterday for most of the show. My issue with Haley is that I think she just lacks conviction. I don't love fake, but he is correct about her. Perhaps some of the allegations of corruption are, I don't want to jump totally on his train with that, but she does lack conviction. And that's why she changes so many opinions. That's why she flops on stuff. And she I don't know, wants to be loved and liked by the right kind of people. Not all people, but certain people want their respect and etc. Trump, mostly doesn't, I don't know. He likes people. He likes flattery so much, but he also likes ticking people off. So he's just kind of, I don't know. Sometimes he doesn't give a flip. Sometimes he just wants to aggravate you on purpose. Sometimes, oh, you say nice things about me? Cool. I'm going to say nice things about you. Like he said that with Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom says great things about me. The DeSantis's thing is, I'm going to say what's true and let the chips fall where they may. And I wish Haley would adopt that, but I don't know how she actually feels about these issues again, because she really lacks conviction. But Chris Christie gave a long answer on the debate stage about why it needs to be parental rights on the transgender stuff, and that they're the ones who are the parents and they love their children. They're going to do what's best. But parents don't always do what's best. Parents don't always do what's kind. Parents don't always know what the right thing is. And before I read this article, let me just, I guess, pose this question. If someone said, my child deeply believes that they're a slug, which, basically, I suppose this is a little bit of the plot of Johnny Walrus, but we'll say slug. And they wanted to live their life out as a slug. Would you think it would be the best care for them for the parent to take their kid to the doctor and say, I would like you to chop off their arms and let's say their legs and just make them as slug-like as possible? Would you think that is kind and compassionate care? You'd probably say this child needs some mental help. This parent needs help as well. Because why would you chop up your child to entertain this delusion? Okay. So the issue, and continues to be the issue with gender affirming surgery and gender affirming hormones and all that stuff, is it's not true. It's all centered around a lie that if you mutilate your body, inject yourself with drugs, that you can somehow meet this reality that you're chasing a pot of gold at the end of a never-ending rainbow. So if you wanted to say, oh yeah, sure, my daughter thinks he's a son, let me chop off her breasts and call him a he. Let's do a hysterectomy. Let's pump him full of, well, let's block the puberty and give him testosterone. And you go that route to try to make your child a son. You don't have a son, you have a scarred daughter. You can never make that child something that they are not. You can learn to come to grips with them having a skewed sense of self and try to deal with that. But flipping them inside out is it's not healthy to chase the lie. So these people who are like, we're just, want to give them the best care. You wouldn't do that for an anorexic person who just believes that they are so fat and be like, yes, the cure is to keep starving yourself. We wouldn't do that. You wouldn't make the slug child. You wouldn't make Johnny the walrus. So why are you trying to make your daughter a son? If they say, well, I feel like a girl, how can they know? How can they substantiate that? People can't explain what a woman is, but they don't want to because they know it exposes their ideology as being as silly as a child believing they're Spider-Man because they feel like Spider-Man, because they like to jump around and they wish they could climb walls and et cetera, et cetera. It's just make believe, even if it feels real. So how is it kind in any sense of the word to mutilate them in this way? And I understand parents will go to these clinics and they'll tell them, like Chloe Cole's parents, they'll say, would you rather have an alive son or a dead daughter? And they do it because they think it's the best care for their kids. They scare the crap out of these parents. And it's good money. You make these kids slaves to big pharma. And then they grow up and they're slaves to big pharma to maintain, their gender identity, but then also to keep themselves healthy as they're breaking their body down. And then after the parent goes through all this and does all this stuff, they're invested in it and can't come to terms that they've harmed their children. And it's very hard for people to come to the conclusion that they've harmed themselves. So this isn't care. This isn't do no harm. Frankensteining children is not medical care. It's experimentation. They are complicated lab rats. That's what we're doing. So Chris Christie on the debate stage talking about all that stuff was pretty disgusting. And Mike DeWine basically had a similar sort of view after talking to families and etc. So and it really puzzles me because if the Republicans are just going to be like, we overrule your veto, what's the political gain in all this for him? And you can say, well, maybe he's just standing on what he feels is right. I think something is wrong with you if you feel that this is right. But Governor Mike DeWine on Friday struck down legislation that would have restricted the medical care of transgender minors and banned transgender girls from female sports. House Bill 68, which cleared the House and Senate earlier this month, would have prevented doctors from prescribing hormones, puberty blockers, or gender reassignment surgery before patients turn 18. It also would have prohibited transgender girls and women from playing on female sports teams in high school and college. Were I to sign House Bill 68, or were House Bill 68 to become law, Ohio would be saying that the government knows better what is medically best for a child than the two people who love that child the most, their parents, DeWine said. DeWine's decision came after. DeWine's decision came after he visited children's hospitals, spoke with families, and reviewed testimony for and against the legislation. He said his administration will draft rules to ban surgery for patients under 18, collect data on transgender medical care for adults and children, and restrict pop-up clinics that don't provide adequate mental health counseling. So here's the incrementalist sort of approach of like, we don't like this thing, we don't like the ban, so we're going to try to do something else and make it claim like there's some kind of win by having other restrictions other than the stronger ones that we had before. People do it with all the time, I guess particularly with abolition bills, but anyway, the bill passed the House and Senate with a supermajority, meaning lawmakers could mobilize enough support to override DeWine's veto. Ahead of Friday's news conference, DeWine's fellow Republicans, including Lieutenant Governor John Husted, voiced support for the legislation and urged him to sign it. Husted is expected to run for governor in 2026. I've been asked my opinion on HB 68. Husted posted Thursday. I support it for two main reasons. Men should not compete in women's sports. Permanent medical decisions concerning gender should not be made when you are a child. I hope the SAFE Act will become law in Ohio. The veto delivered a victory to transgender Ohioans, advocates, and medical providers who spoke out against the legislation and urged DeWine to reject it. These are gut-wrenching decisions that should be made by parents and should be informed by teams of doctors who are advising them. DeWine said these are parents who have watched their child suffer, sometimes for years, and who have real concerns that their child may not survive to reach adulthood. So there's that emotional blackmail there, and I'm not saying that there's not concerns of people doing that, but if you need to get to the root of that and not actually chop up people's bodies and inject them with drugs and get to the root of their dysphoria. And some people don't even have dysphoria. There's some kind of underlining morbidity that's causing what is appearing like dysphoria. But people are so quick to jump down that road that people are being misdiagnosed. And sometimes people go down that road and they can't reconcile what they've done something to themselves, so they just keep going forward and instead of correcting the course. But the issue is that you're trying to affirm something that isn't true. Like if someone wanted to, and we don't let kids like get like plastic surgery and life altering, you don't want them to get tattoos and stuff. But when it comes to this, we're like, no, you gotta chop off the breast and alter the body. It's just really crazy to me. But if someone wanted to change a physical appearance thing, which I think people are too obsessed with like plastic surgery and all that stuff anyway. But they're doing that to look a certain way. But if you're changing your outward appearance trying to affirm something that just isn't true, isn't that a problem? It will never be true that Caitlyn Jenner is a woman. It will never be true. Never. It'll never be true that Dylan Mulvaney is a woman. Never. It'll never be true that Jazz Jennings is a girl. Never. Never. While the child's care team informs their decisions, it is the parents who are living with the child who know their child better than anyone else in the world. The governor said little about the sports provision on Friday, but he previously signaled that he believes the issue shouldn't be handled by government. That measure was initially separate from the medical care bill, but the House lawmakers combined them into one proposal. In the letter to DeWine, several healthcare organizations said doctors already get parental consent and don't recommend gender transition surgery for minors. To advance measures, supporters have demonized providers and parents alike and pushed misinformation in order to deny care to incredibly small number of Ohio children. They wrote, oh, because there's a small number of abuse, it should make it okay. Simply put, this bill takes away parental rights and will harm Ohio kids. Proponents argue the bill was necessary to protect children and pointed to stories of people who detransition, something LGBTQ advocates say is rare. A 2022 study from the American Academy of Pediatrics found 94% of youth maintain their gender identity 5 years after their social transition. The Ohio High School Athletic Association allows transgender girls to join female teams if they've completed at least 1 year of hormone therapy. 7 transgender girls were approved to play girls sports at OHSAA schools for the 2023 through 24 school year. That is not right. If your kids want to transition and you go through all that, they have to learn that they can't get everything. And if it's more important for them to transition, quote unquote, then they can't play the sport. And that's what it should be. That's what, especially if it's dudes playing with girls. If you're a biological boy and you believe it's your girl, you can still play if you can make the team after you've given yourself estrogen. But if you can't, that's your problem. But you don't go over to a girls' team. But the guys coming on the girls' team, that's insane. And nobody should tolerate that. Nobody. And it doesn't. And people trying to make compromises where like, if they meet this standard here, you're just incentivizing people to transition earlier. Like Caitlyn Jenner, when he was running for governor of Ohio, he was like, I'm sorry, not Ohio, California, and he was talking about this issue. He didn't think that boys should play in girl sports unless he said, I don't know if he's changed his mind about this, but he proposed like, well, if it's early enough and they haven't gone through the female, puberty or whatever, and they meet certain standards, then yeah, they should be able to play. And I'm like, that just incentivizes people to transition earlier so they can play. So their body does match more like, or mimic more, or mock more of a female body. So we're making deals with the devil to do something that ultimately ends up more immoral. I hope, if nothing else, the governor will look at this and look at the numbers of kids who are going to be harmed if this legislation goes into effect, which they claimed was a small number before. Adrienne Childry, a transgender woman running for Ohio House, said before DeWine's veto, the number of families that are going to have to decide whether they risk their children's safety or put their house on the market and to move to a different state. Will lawmakers override DeWine's veto? Proponents of House Bill 68 immediately panned DeWine's decision and urged the legislature to override his veto. Since it was House legislation, the chamber would need to act first. The bill sponsors and the House have dedicated nearly 3 years to get the bill right, to empower parents and protect children. House Speaker Jason Stephens, Kitts Hill, said in a statement, it was passed by a veto-proof majorities in each chamber. We will certainly discuss as a caucus and take the appropriate next steps. Senate President Matt Huffman R. Lima signaled that Senate Republicans would support an override if the House takes action. I'm extremely disappointed by the governor's veto. He said changes were made to the bill to accommodate his concerns, and the bill was strongly supported in the Senate by Republican caucus. We look forward to the House taking the next step. So, DeWine said he hopes the administrative action he announced will be enough to prevent that. I truly believe we can be collaborative, find common ground, and adopt rules to protect Ohio children, adults, and families in this area. I'm just going to scroll up really quick, back up to his initial kind of compromise he tried to make about how they would look at different stuff, because I don't remember seeing anything about protecting the sports. So if he can do research and whatnot, blah blah blah, and still isn't deciding to protect women's sports, that's or not just women's sports, but just sports, that is messed up. They said they draft rules to ban surgery for patients, collect data on transgender medical care for adults, restrict pop-up clinics that don't provide adequate mental health counseling. So that's that. I don't see anything there about protecting the sports. I'm not saying it's not in his plans. It's just not in this article. So I don't get it. I don't get it, especially if you have a veto proof majority. But I guess maybe he feels he has nothing to lose upsetting the people of Ohio with the Republicans. So I just wonder, so maybe that is his actual conviction, or maybe he has something in mind of, I don't know, trying to, if he wants to be like the next sort of moderate to take center stage and be like, I'm the one you should support. That's why it's wild to me. This issue should be so easy for Republicans to get on board with. It's, you're affirming a lie. You're chopping up your child to affirm a lie. You're pumping them full of drugs to affirm a lie. Gender identity, it's make believe. It's a religion. Like, even when people try to use the term cis, like, no, I don't identify as a woman. I am a woman. Don't call me cis. You can't even explain what a woman is. You can't substantiate your argument. Just break it down. When someone's like, I think I'm a girl, what does that mean? How would you know? Because most people, when you ask that question, they'll say some pretty stereotypical things. Just because you may be more effeminate, just because you may be gay, just because you, I don't know, whatever. But wanting to have long hair and wear sparkly things or dresses or wear makeup or whatever the reason may be doesn't make you a girl. So we got to get it together, Republicans. We got to get it together. But I'm sure that they'll, especially with the lieutenant governor wanting to run for governor, they'll probably override this. And speaking of the clinics, though, I've seen some training from some of the clinics, and it's so disturbing. I mean, we talked about whistleblower accounts on this program and have read like the article that the Free Press had put out about how they're not really providing care to these patients, how they're rushing through much of this stuff. But I saw like a I guess a training video once, and I did play it, of someone who was coming to they was trying to get their parents to come to term with their child being trans, and the child kept passing out at school, wasn't eating, and was like starving themselves because they didn't want to get bigger and they wanted a smaller frame. And I'm like, there's so many things that they could probably get to the root of with this child who wants to hurt themselves in that kind of way. And the fact that they're like, yep, that he's a girl, let's start him on estrogen and tell the mother, like, you got to go along with it or they're going to keep hurting themselves, was so disturbing. That's how they just come to those conclusions, instead of really digging into the psyche of why that person is really hurting themselves in that sort of way. So they're not providing care to these kids. I'm not saying these parents don't love their kids, But it is strange though when you see a parent like, I have 2 trans children. I'm like, what are the odds of that? Is there a little nurture going on rather than nature there? Yeah. I recommend people read Abigail Schreier's book that talks about these families and these parents in these situations, some who, are in the LGBT community, who are more leftist and stuff, and um what happens when you do go along with your kids transition, and or when you don't want to quite go along with it, and the heartbreak and shoddy sort of care that they're getting in these circumstances. But anyway, let's move on. I want to play this video of Nikki Haley. We talked about her like all day yesterday, not the whole show, but most of it, about her terrible answer with the American Civil War. She was asked by a voter who they say, oh, that was a Democrat plan, etc. Perhaps they were. It doesn't matter. Like, Republicans send people out to places to talk to Democrats to get them to ask a question. So it's called tracking, by the way. That's the technical terms. In the business. When you're a tracker, you go out, you say something, you're recording something, groups will pay you to do it. I've done tracking before. So you should be ready for that, because people obviously do it. But it wasn't a difficult question. It should have been more like a layup for a Republican candidate to say, oh, what caused the Civil War? Explain it, and then go into Republicans, Party of Abolition, freed the slaves, all that stuff. Like, it should have been easy. Like, Democrats, yeah, there's still a major political party that was for slavery, not us. Very easy kind of layup. But she talked about freedom. It was about freedom and other sort of stuff, and wouldn't say slavery, wouldn't mention it. And when the person called her out for it, she's like, what do you want me to say about slavery? And she cleaned it up the next day, or tried to, and she was digging some holes. So I did play one of her responses, but I'm going to play this different response. And the governor of New Hampshire is right next to her. She's having a tough time. Someone roasted her for flip-flopping. I think someone called her the John Kerry. I don't know what she said in response to it, but a kid roasted her. People asked her about being Trump's VP pick, and they're like, well, hopefully you can redeem yourself and say that you won't be his VP, which she wouldn't answer. And she uttered the words, my truth. Like, she's not going to answer the way that they want her to answer. And she's like, I have to speak my truth. And there's only the truth. I hate the whole my truth thing. I hate it. That is jargon that does not jive with typical Republicans, I think. So I don't know who she's appealing to or trying to appeal to. But anyway, here's a snippet of her again trying to defend her comments.
In the South, it's a given that it's about slavery. To me, it was about what
Let me roll that back a little bit.
I guess if you grow up in the South, it's a given that it's about slavery. To me, it was about what freedom. What do you do? It's bigger than slavery. That was such a stain on our history. But what do you take from it going forward? Yes, of course, slavery can never happen again. But going forward, doesn't that mean we should focus on the freedoms of people to live their life, not to have government, not to have any other person tell them what they can and can't do? That's been trampled on the past few years. That's the part we've got to make sure we never take anything away from. So look, I mean, you guys can make it about something else, but if you look at my record in South Carolina, we dealt with this a whole lot more than these people. And what I'll tell you is, yes, you can acknowledge a point in history, but what do you do with that point in history? You got to make sure the lessons constantly go forward so that we never see it again. Do you think that's
So the problem with that answer, I have no idea exactly what she has learned, and I have no idea exactly okay, her answer sort of sounds like lost cause kind of answer, to be like, oh, it was about freedom and other things, and it's okay, freedom to do what? They had a problem with government overreach. regarding what, economics regarding what. Well, like I said this yesterday, we read through a trans well part of the document of South Carolina where she's from, and there's there's a secession document, and it was very much about slavery. So she's correct that people from the South ought to know. And there are people say it's more complicated than that, etc. States, you could say states' rights, etc. Blah blah blah. But it was centered around this particular thing, and you could say, well, if they're willing to do it with slavery, what else are they willing to restrict our freedoms on? It doesn't sound good either way. What other way you kind of slice it? She's like, so to me, it was about freedom. The people who were there are people who are arguing. They were arguing freedom. We have a freedom to do this thing, this evil thing, and abolitionists were saying, we need justice. We need justice. Everyone is created in the image of God and requires freedom and liberty, true, but they require justice. And having this unjust thing happen, we need to abolish it. There are people who are incrementalists and stuff who were like, we can phase it out, or hinder it. And in the UK, you had Wilberforce, who was dealing with incrementalists and stuff, and he tried to abolish something, and they're like, oh, let's make more room on the slave ship, and would pass a bill like that. So there was people arguing that they had a freedom to do this thing that was really unjust, and then there was people who were like, we need justice. So if you're going to relate that today, like, what did we learn from it? We've had the government trampling on our rights too much. It just sounds like the parallel with the freedoms is like back to the people who were pro-slavery. And I know that's not her intention, and she probably just means like the slaves weren't free and we need to be free because they kept us locked in our houses or something. And she's not giving specific examples, and perhaps that's the issue, so we can interpret the way that, I don't know, however it's coming out. Don't get me wrong, I do not believe that she's pro-slavery. I don't believe that she's racist or whatever. I'm not talking about this because I believe those things about her. I just think her answer is so terrible, and she keeps digging a hole, and she keeps talking about we have to talk about the lessons that are learned from this. And I don't know if she has. I don't know if that's true. We all know that slavery is bad after the fact, but we carry over other injustices into the present and still drag our feet about abolishing them. And yes, I'm going to mention abortion because that is a dehumanization process of someone who should have equal protection under the law. People who are made in the image of God, who should have entitled to inalienable rights, but we rationalize for whatever reasons to disqualify from having those rights. And then we treat those living human beings as property. And you say people don't treat them as, they do treat them as property, because it's not a matter of human rights that because if they just had the right to life, then you couldn't kill them. Then you'd protect them. But they believe that a woman should be able to take that life, but if the father slipped them an abortion pill or something, then they wouldn't be for that. They would say that that's wrong. Because they would say it's her choice. So it's not about that human being as a human being that deserves rights. It's about that human being that woman's property, to treat them like an accessory that they can keep or they can discard when it is convenient to them, when they match her plans, as opposed to this being someone who is inherently valuable with the same human rights as the mother. It's not that the baby is more important than her, but I don't think the baby has a special right to kill anyone, and I don't think she has a special right to kill anyone. So Nikki Haley is pro-life, But she's pretty squishy, I think, on this topic. So there was a way to bridge the past into the present. She could have did the dunk on Democrats thing that, DeSantis was asked about it. He brought up like abolition. That's Republicans' shining achievement. Tom Cotton was like, Civil War happened because Democrats were mad they couldn't expand slavery into the West. and so he dunked on them and talked about how they're still obsessed with race today. That's a good dunk. She didn't take those opportunities. But if you're going to compare that past atrocity and say, what have we learned from it? She missed a really good opportunity to say, we need to stop treating human beings as property, dehumanizing them, and taking away their rights. Saying that some people don't qualify for inalienable rights that are endowed to us by our creator. And if you don't want to say creator of natural rights or whatever, but them's the words in the Declaration. So, I don't know what she's learned about it. Because if you're saying the Civil War happened because of the role of government, that they were to, I don't know, burdensome on the people, that's the South's argument. And then you're bridging that to today. It just kind of makes it sound like, yeah, slavery was bad, but did they kind of have a point? No, the government does have a legitimate role. There's lots of things that people want them to do that isn't within their original sort of purview. But ensuring our inalienable rights to life, to liberty, pursuit of happiness, that is something that the government is supposed to do. So they had an obligation, a moral obligation, to seek justice in the case of slavery, to stop that evil action from occurring. And I would say we have the same sort of moral duty to the preborn. But she's pretty squishy on that. So I don't know what the heck she's learned. I would hope for her to be more clear, but she's answered this a couple times now, and it still sounds like that word salad nonsense. So Nikki Haley is blowing it. And she doesn't have a good chance of being the front runner anyway. Of course, Trump is like leading in all the polls. I do think the polls are inaccurate. And we'll see how inaccurate during Iowa, which it's a caucus thing, so I don't know how well it can really poll. But if DeSantis doesn't pull out a win, which I would assume if someone was going to win and not be Trump, it would be him. That's not I don't know if he would drop out after that, but I think that is kind of a make or break, because they've invested so much into Iowa. So we'll see. But Trump doesn't come off as someone who's extraordinarily confident that he's just going to wipe the floor with everybody, not particularly in Iowa. There's some states, like, I don't know how someone else could win Michigan, to be frank. I don't see how that's possible. And I don't think that they moved I don't know what day it is, but they've changed our process and moved it up, and there isn't really presence here from the campaigns that I'm aware of. Though Trump has still, you can feel his shadow, I guess, cast across the state. So still has much influence with delegates, and obviously has the most name ID out of people. I think it's weird that people don't know who DeSantis is and Nikki Haley is, but I'm a political nerd, and not everyone is that, well versed. I mean, there's plenty of people who don't know the other candidates in the race very well. So if they're going to go with somebody, they like their default, unless they dislike Trump, their default is Trump. So if they don't educate and make a case on why they're better, he's just going to sweep everywhere else. But I was kind of like the place to prove whether the polls are accurate or not. And if they are inaccurate, then other polls will be inaccurate. And then it becomes more of a race. Now, it looks like if someone is going to win New Hampshire that isn't Trump, it would be Haley. But this slavery thing is wild. This slavery thing is wild. Absolutely terrible answer from Nikki Haley, and continues to be a terrible answer. Certainly, certainly. Last thing I just want to mention before I let you go, I just do want to acknowledge that there was a Christmas Eve attack in Nigeria where at least 140 people were dead. This was last updated. Well, this was published on the 26th. I think was maybe more than that. But it's the bloodiest violence since 2018 when more than 200 people were killed. Nomadic herders in Nigeria killed at least 140 people during a Christmas Eve rampage through 15 villages, according to media reports. The hours-long attacks happened in the country's Central Plateau state as suspected nomadic herders used firearms and machetes on their victims, Reuters reported. As I am talking to you in Mangu local governance alone, we buried 15 people. As of this morning in Bokos, we are counting not less than 100 corpses. I am yet to take stock of the deaths in Barkin Ladi Plateau government. Governor Caleb Mutfwang said in a broadcast on the local channel's television, "It has been a very terrifying Christmas for us. The violence was the bloodiest in the country since 2018, where more than 200 people were killed." It's really crazy to me, just because it's been a long time, as I said at the top of the hour, since my family went to Nigeria. My dad went there. Gosh, I guess it's been like 20 years. But he went there, and then my oldest sister went back with him, and they were there for like a month, and they had a great time doing mission work and stuff. But it's just wild to know that people go into such dangerous places and they continuously get more dangerous, and he doesn't have like a plan as of late to go back anytime soon. But people who go there to try to preach and minister to people and so on, and it's just always dangerous how people put their lives on the line. Be really grateful that you're safe where you are. I know there's such terrible crime here in the US, and we obviously don't want it to get worse, but man, oh man, there are definitely worse places to be in the world. Definitely worse places to be in the world. So keep them in your prayers. But I didn't see a lot of people talking about it, so I just wanted to draw it to your guys' attention. Sorry to have a bummer kind of headline as we close out. Last show of the year. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website at blacktnews.com, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff. You guys can also check out different merchandise that is available on the website. I mentioned yesterday that for the Democrats who are like dunking on Nikki Haley, and some people have brought up like Ron's this slaves learned skills thing, which is, you can be offended by it, but it's objectively true. Like I saw Daryl Scott, who I know I met, and we've had good conversations in person and stuff, and correspondence online, and he keeps trashing DeSantis, and he has mentioned that he has like a personal gripe with him too, and I'm sure he's a Trump guy. So but he said, which is worse, Nikki Haley's slavery comments or Ron DeSantis's skills comments or benefit from slavery comments? I'm just like, was it worse when Ron said it, or was it worse when Booker T. Washington said it? And I posted a page from a book that Booker T. Washington wrote about how slaves learned different skills and then used those skills. It's just a historical fact. But as people dunk on Republicans for this stuff, I just want people to remember that Joe Biden was asked how he was going to appeal to voters in the South and Democrat primaries. And his answer was, "You don't know my state. My state was a slave state." And so we played that yesterday. You guys can go look up that clip yourself. But I did write such a thing on the back of the t-shirt with the "Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden." And so there's a list of his different racism on the back. And that was one of the things that made the cut. There's also the "You ain't black" comment and other things. So there is a long sleeve version of the shirt, which I have the long sleeve version. It's pretty comfy. So go ahead and get that merch. I have other merch as well, like, you know, the "I'm not the victim you're looking for" shirt. I got the "Bitter Not Better" and mugs and so on. So go ahead and check that out. I encourage you guys also to check out my different books that I have. I have 17 books. You guys can just search my name, Christina Elbar, on Amazon. But if you go to Black Teen News and go to the merchandise page, there's a banner that will take you to my book website where you can learn more about my products. I write historical fiction, fantasy, contemporary fantasy, romance, paranormal romance, just anything that my imagination basically comes up with and I feel passionate about. I just go ahead and pen it to paper. And I have 2 nonfiction books. One of them is, of course, "God is Blatantly Against Abortion." The other is "Slay Your Fear: How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear." So just go check me out. And if you like it, go ahead and leave a review and tell someone else to get it as well. So as I said, this is the last show for the year. New Year's is Sunday. So crazy. And thank you to everyone who wished my parents a happy anniversary, by the way, 43 years. There's lots of very nice comments on YouTube, and I'm sure Facebook as well. I think that posted on Facebook, but and on Twitter, but most comments came from YouTube. So I appreciate it. I shared a past article that I wrote about them, and people said my dad had drip from his outfits of the past. Well, I'm assuming they're talking about my dad, but my mom's sweater was cute too. But I'm pretty sure they meant my dad. They said he sounded funny from his humor, and they said I looked like both my parents. Particularly, they thought I looked like my dad, which isn't, it's not news to me. But people were happy and appreciative to see people together for that long, because there's a lot of people who just can't hold it together. But I will say, we had a discussion about marriage and Bible study on Wednesday, and my cousin brought up different things that in Corinthians, where it talks about the role of wives, husbands, etc. And wives submit to your husbands, but husbands are supposed to basically be willing to lay their life down on the line. And he realized, the Bible talks about what you're supposed to do. It doesn't talk about how you're supposed to feel about it particularly. And I mentioned how we're, regardless of how someone else is acting, you are still accountable for how you act. God still holds you accountable for your actions. So you still always have to carry yourself in a manner that is pleasing to him. And I mentioned my mom, and both my parents are great, but my mom really honors my dad, and she really always acts as a Christian. I guess is the best way to put it. There's one story I tell really quickly. My dad, they got into an argument, my parents, and my dad was praying, and he's just like, "Lord, tell her to rebuke the devil that's in her." And the Lord was just kind of like, "You better rebuke the devil in you." And he's just going ah. And the Lord, and God's just kind of like, "She's over it already." My mom's thing was "Don't let the sun go down on your wrath." That's the scripture in the Bible. She didn't believe in carrying stuff over. So you can be upset or whatever, but she's not going to let something that happens hinder her, how she's held accountable to God and her relationship with God. And she's going to keep doing what's right. And when you have two people who are willing to do that together, that's one of the reasons why they've been together for 43 years. Because there's a commitment to each other, but there's a commitment to God. So unfortunately, you might have a case where there's one person who's willing to do that and someone else who's not. But I'm blessed. I know that I am, and you don't have to tell me, but I do thank you for your kind words. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me for 2023. Going into 2024, I very much appreciate your love and support, your financial support, your buying of merchandise, telling other people to watch, being here live. Many of you who are here time and time and time again. I know there's different folks to choose from. Not this past week, but because everyone's on vacation, but other people where you can get your news from and commentary from. And I don't take it for granted that you come here. And I appreciate obviously people who agree with me, but I appreciate people who also disagree, especially respectfully, and engage in civil discourse. And it, sharpens my, debate skills and so on. And helps me to be able to articulate my position to be more persuasive in a area where that's pretty evident, I think, is the abortion topic. I've had to listen to a lot of people to know how they think. I understand how the other side thinks. A lot of people, I think, on the left don't quite understand people on the right, and not everybody on the right understands everybody on the left. But I try to understand people where they're coming from. I may vehemently disagree with you, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand your perspective. I may find it totally immoral, but that doesn't mean that I'm not trying to be understanding of the position. And that's why we can have a conversation, or why I can articulate my position pretty well. So I'm grateful. I'm thankful. And I guess no time will basically pass until I see you guys on Monday and it's a new year. But again, thank you. And I will most likely see you guys in 2024, where we're going to have a very busy year. And we'll see who is elected president of the United States in November. All right, God bless.